The following program is brought to you by the 0DB Movie Podcast feed. Good evening, 0DB Movie Podcast listeners, and welcome to episode 7 of After Dark, our after hours movie podcast that we do after our little monster goes to sleep. I am your humble host, Gabe Aniel, and tonight with me is my other half in life and in this After Dark podcast. That's right, folks, it's my co-host and lovely wife, Claudia. Good evening.
Good evening. Lucky number 7.
Lucky number 7. This is going to be a good one. We're into March now. We've survived 3 nor'easters.
With a 4th on the way.
We're expecting a 4th, and it's the first day of spring tomorrow.
Yeah, wonderful.
So, yeah, happy Northeast. So today, we are discussing one of my, if not the most favorite comic book movies of all time. Superman, the movie, will always be my number 1. But I mean, one day we're going to have to get into like how much nostalgia is involved with that rating. You know?
Fair enough.
But we're talking about Oscar-nominated movie Logan.
Yes.
Logan, Wolverine. Directed by James Mangold, who I never heard of until I looked him up. And he's got a pretty badass resume. He's an American film and television director. Director, screenwriter, and producer, actually. He directed Girl Interrupted, 1999, Walk the Line, 2005, which he also co-wrote. The 2007 remake 3:10 to Yuma, The Wolverine 2013, and Logan 2017. He also wrote and directed one of my favorites, Copland 1997, which was Sylvester Stallone, Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel, and Ray Liotta.
And what's his face? The one, oh my God, he does all the NYCFC stuff for New York. Rappaport.
Oh, right. Yeah, he had a good role in that.
Yeah,
that was good. I enjoyed that.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty badass for this guy, you know. Apparently, let's see, we've got Scott Frank, also did the screenplay, and Michael Green. I looked these people up. They have some pretty good stuff. What did you know about this film? I mean, it's a pretty new film, so I mean, like, what did you know when it came out? Like, what did you expect? Do you remember the 2 previous Wolverine movies that were kind of like sprinkled in between the other X-Men movies, which was X-Men Origins Wolverine and The Wolverine?
I know I saw those films. There was one like where Wolverine's like in Asia. Is that one of them?
Japan. That was The Wolverine, which was written by this guy.
And The Wolverine, it was weird. Was it a different time frame? Was he like in a different dimension?
I don't know. Yeah.
There was that. And then is that the movie that was also with Ryan Reynolds where he played...
The Bad Deadpool?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so.
He was in that one? Because
so.
Then I know there was the one with his dad, like Sabretooth or whatever.
Right.
That I don't remember.
Well, his brother.
Or was that his brother?
His brother. That was Origins.
Origins. Okay.
Yeah.
Because then there was with Liev Schreiber.
Yeah, that was Origins. That was good.
But
they're brothers.
Didn't like Nick Nolte play his dad or something? Like he was. Am I mixing it up with a different hero? I
mean, you know,
like anything is possible.
You could sell me on that one. Sounds like a good cast, right? Nick Nolte as Wolverine's dad.
Big long beard. It was.
Could almost be like, you know.
I swear, I think his name was Sabretooth.
Like today, Kurt Russell.
Yeah. Anyway, but so I do remember seeing those films. Not particular. I mean, I liked them because I was like Wolverine, but I wasn't like, wow, we're gonna, you know, this is gonna be an amazing film. I mean, when Logan came out, we knew it was gonna be in a different vein. And we saw it about a year ago because we saw it for my birthday, I remember.
Origins has Ryan Reynolds.
Origins?
Yeah, with Liev Schreiber.
Yeah. So when it came to seeing Logan, I knew it was going to be different because they billed it as being different. It was going to be more dramatic and more adult.
It was rated R. It's rated R.
Yes. Yes.
Which is great about that is because in the behind the scenes stuff, they talk about how they didn't make it rated R so they can automatically put sex and violence in it. They made it rated R so they can use adult themes and tell adult stories, and that's why they thought, I mean, I was excited to see this film because of how disappointed I was in those first two Wolverine movies. I started off as a Wolverine fan as a kid, not as an X-Men fan. Wolverine randomly. It was Wolverine and Fantastic Four for some reason for me. That's as far as I went as far as Marvel went. Although I was a Spider-Man fan, but I never recognized Spider-Man as Marvel. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think they were in those worlds yet back then when I was a kid. I mean, I'm not that old, but
I don't think I remember him being part of Marvel either.
I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I enjoyed what is it? X-Men Origins Wolverine. I thought that was better than the Wolverine. It shows up getting him all the adamantium skeleton,
Right,
and
right.
all that stuff. Leaf Schreiber.
He had like a wife and she got killed. She was
sure.
like Native American.
Oh,
Remember?
I don't remember that, but that
She-
makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, like it was like this whole bit, but his timeline is so skewed too, like because he's older and like I don't know when was he born? He was in World War II. Oh,
The
Jesus.
1840s, I
Okay.
believe.
All right. Well then, I'm completely off. But I know in one of these movies he had a wife, and
It's probably Origins, because
maybe,
like he
and
was
she
like
was
living in the
killed.
wilderness.
Yeah.
He escapes the facilities. Yeah, there's this whole,
yeah.
and that's just the movie versions because Wolverine goes deep back to being the Hulk's first enemy.
That's crazy.
They needed to come up with a character that could actually like match the Hulk, and they got the Wolverine, which was opposite, a 5'4"
Yeah, he was little.
crazy thing with claws.
Should have been played by Chris Kattan instead of Hugh Jackman.
The weird thing, I don't even have this here. The weird thing is that in the credits for Origins, Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. In the Wolverine, the 2013, the James Mangold one, it says Wolverine / Logan. And then, of course, in Logan, it just says Logan.
Yeah, and then his real name is James Howlett. So
Yeah.
I don't know where Logan came from, but
Well, if you click on like IMDb, if you click on like full cast for like writers, it even goes into like which comic book series had part to do with this movie. So it said like all these writers Logan, all these writers this other series, and like.
well, it would make sense because like, assuming Logan is just like what he's called as Wolverine, like the entity he is, like the man
When he
is.
mutates, he mutates into the Wolverine.
Right. But then like James Howlett was like just a human.
Right.
And then Logan was the like changed human. Because he was still a mutant, right? He had he still had the claws and all of that.
Yeah.
They just weren't adamantium.
Right. They were bone.
Right. So then Logan is like the changed human. And then now that you call this film Logan, it's like making the difference between, or maybe bridging the gap between the human and the legend of the Wolverine. And then
because the look they said they got from Old Man Logan comics, but the stories they said they got from X-23,
right,
which is the girl.
the girl, right.
So it's
Laura.
a combo of both, Yeah, I mean, the movie's got a cool flow. Let's why don't we jump into your notes? And I do that with John too. We all take notes,
I know.
But I like how you just riff off of them because it's like you're barely even reading them,
I know.
which is awesome.
Well, I start off by, saying that the film starts out with like these tight shots, like a close up of Logan's face, and something's going on. You hear in the background. There's like random noise you don't know. You're very disoriented. You don't know what's going on, and then there's a close up of Logan's feet as he's like getting himself out of what you find out is a car. And then sure enough, you see that his car is being jacked. Basically, this gang of lowlives or whatever, or thugs are trying to steal the rims off of his like limo.
Right.
And you're like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why is Logan randomly in a limo and whatever? And he obviously cares very much about this car because when there are shots fired, he's like, not the car or whatever, like, so you're like,
It's almost
whoa,
like he probably put his last penny into
exactly,
that
we're
job
like, what's
car.
going on here? And then of course, it's the grisly fight where he's just like clawing people's faces off, which is pretty cool. And I hadn't realized that this film was R-rated versus the PG and PG-13 ratings in the past, and how even though they weren't looking for this rating to be violent, it did become very violent, and it became very
Yes.
just like the other thing about the film too is like it doesn't have that huge budget, right? It's not like trying to be a superhero CGI budget movie. It's just like
It's a Western.
gritty kind of Western, kind of,
Takes
just
place in
in your face.
2049, I believe.
Yes, 2049, we find out later. Which is kind of cool because their take in the future is still like very similar to what we have now, like down to like the phones look like the phones we have now.
The only
cars
thing that looked
kinda look
futuristic
like
was the limo.
yeah, but like
Which
not
is fine.
really.
We know it's a low budget film.
didn't
This doesn't matter to me,
It's not like it did cool shit. Like, oh, sorry. It's not like it did cool stuff that like cars don't do right now. Like it
Right.
was just a normal car.
It wasn't like a transformer.
And then like the
that.
people he's driving around are just doing normal stuff, like the prom people and
Vegas
like the
type
Vegas
people.
people, like whatever. They're just all like, even their outfits, like there's nothing super futuristic about it.
Right.
It's just kind of like we are in the future, but I think the film is also saying like this is just a universal story. And really the film is about the death of a legend,
Right.
and more than one legend, because obviously Professor X dies as well, and it's heartbreaking. But I think that the whole point is to make the story small enough to have that bigger impact of like, here are these humans essentially, even though they're mutants, but here are these people. Here's this family they've sort of put together, and now it's finishing, like. And you tell that from the beginning.
It's all coming to a head.
Yeah, like you're not looking at that tight close up of Logan and feeling like, here's a guy who's going to make it. You're thinking, this is somebody who's at the end of the line and like,
Right, because
it's painful.
Immediately, this is the hero, right? But he
Yeah.
gets out of the cab. He can't even, like, his claws don't even come all the way out.
I know.
They're like,
it's sad. I know. And he's old and like,
yeah.
and then you see like throughout the film, he's like obviously drinking and he's not taking care of himself. And then it takes a while to find out exactly what's going on with him. I don't think that there's ever like a definitive, diagnosis, but I mean, it's made pretty clear what's happening with him, and it's terminal, and he's just trying to get out of this place. Like he's trying to take Xavier with him.
He's being poisoned by what makes him strong.
Right. Which was done to him.
Right.
Like this is a mutation that he underwent. Like, yeah, okay, so he was a mutant in the sense that he had his powers, but then they were like messed with. And now after all these years, after all the good things he did, all the bad things he did, whatever it is, it's killing him.
Right.
And that's part of the legend, right? So, I mean, throughout the film, there's a lot of mention of that too. Like, well, I'll get into it a little bit later, but with the comic book,
right?
It's like a lot of like referencing itself.
Right.
Like the story is referencing itself.
He's like 20% of these stories happen this way. The rest is all made up, kind of thing.
But it was cool. So so we see that grisly fight, and we see Logan express his rage through that. Like, I mean, he's like putting his claws through people's faces, like just ripping heads off, and like really just
that's
being
his berserker.
Really violent.
That's the whole thing with Wolverine when he kicks into berserker mode,
Right.
which is what they call it, is when he basically blacks out and just does that.
Right.
Limbs are severed.
But I don't know if we've ever really seen him do that in any of the other films.
Well, they show him berserk, but this was done differently.
Yeah.
It's a lot more raw. Like, it's not like him fighting soldiers with like M16s coming at him, and he's cutting like off the tanks.
And he's like protecting like a freaking limo.
Right,
Like,
because
you're
remember
like,
those. Remember in Origins, they showed him like fighting in like the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, and like
but
him
he,
next to Shreve.
but he didn't have adamantium yet,
No,
right?
and the claws would break and stuff. Yeah,
So I'm also noting that he's alone. He's broken down, and right in the beginning of the film is when it's stated that the year is 2029. Following that, there's a scene of him, in this bathroom again, lit very poor, like not poorly, but dark, solemn, like just dirty, gritty. And he's at the sink looking in a mirror and he's like expelling the bullets from his body. And you're
you
like, oh
can
my God.
visibly see he's healing very, very slowly.
I mean, it was like effort.
Yeah,
He's like fighting to get this stuff out of him. And it was painful to watch and it was uncomfortable.
oh, as a viewer, I was
Yeah.
already like, oh my God, just put him out of his misery.
I know. There's a big sense of that. And then after all of that, we have a funeral scene where he's obviously driven a family to a funeral. It's rainy, and that's when we first see Gabriella. She's like a crazy lady, comes out of nowhere, starts screaming at him. She's like, "You're the Wolverine, you're the Wolverine." And so that's kind of interesting because, we've just sort of been handed this sequence of him just being like this decrepit old man, basically. And then here comes this lady reminding us
Calling him out.
who he was or,
Yeah.
should be the Wolverine. And he's not having it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. And she's like telling him that they need help and he needs to help them. And he doesn't want anything to do with it. And he basically just goes back to the family that he was with. And as he's leaving, Gabriella had gotten back in her car, and he looks back to her and he sees Laura for the first time in the back seat of the car, and she's looking at him. And so you see that, and that little girl. I mean, the actress Daphne Keane is wonderful. Like, she just has such a presence, and just even in that little moment of her staring at him, it's like so haunting, and she instantly creates a connection with him, and there's something that obviously is going to pull him to her, however much he wants to ignore it and deny it.
Without her saying a word.
Oh yeah, she spends less. She doesn't talk for the first half of the film.
First two acts.
Yeah.
Some people saying like the behind the scenes things that she didn't speak for 90% of the movie.
I wouldn't say. Well, I mean, when she starts speaking, it feels like she's speaking all the time. But I guess maybe overall,
I would say she doesn't speak for the first two acts.
Yeah.
Third act is definitely when she comes on board.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we see Logan sort of being introduced to more of his day to day, which is horrible and depressing. Like, he's like paying off some orderly at a hospital for a bag of pills. You're like, oh great, he's a drug addict too. Like, you don't know what's going on. He's just sort of making his way sadly through his life, and we see that he's being watched by now I forget his name. What's the guy's name? The one with the metal hand. He's the villain.
Yeah, Pierce.
Pierce. He's being watched by Pierce. And we're like, okay, so obviously something's about to go down, right?
It's about to go down.
And they have a confrontation, interrogation. And of course, Logan is like...
Pierce likes to talk.
Yeah, he does like to talk. I think that maybe they had to... I don't know that character. Does he exist in the X-Men universe? I've never really heard of him before, but I think that they had to kind of create like a villain that could maybe somehow hold his own against Logan and what we know of Logan. And it's kind of hard to come up with that out of the blue.
He's got the...
He has like a metal hand, like a cyborg kind of hand, but we don't really know.
He's an amputee, basically.
He doesn't really have any powers, though.
No, I mean, that thing is
It's
badass.
enhanced, but he doesn't ever really use it.
Yeah, there's some times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely like a bounty hunter type. He just seems like a henchman.
Main henchman guy.
But he is...
he's almost like a Hux.
Yeah. But they like definitely cast a good looking guy, and like he's got like that twang going.
Right.
for the country aspect of the film.
Apparently,
the
that was on
Western.
purpose. They wanted a guy that was more casual and liked to talk more, as opposed to like a yelling dictator type,
Right. Right, because
Louisiana type,
yeah,
slow,
like
southern,
exactly.
all that put together.
That's what I was gathering, and because that's kind of creepy too. When you have that kind of
Right.
villain.
When they're taking their time, and and he's enjoying what he does,
Right.
and he's a
Right.
fan of Wolverine.
Right. He does say that. He says he's a fan, but he's sort of caught up in. Again, I guess I should say that at this point in the film, I think we've already been introduced to the idea that there aren't really any more mutants around. Like something has happened.
Yeah, we get to some point when he's like, "Oh, the last of the mutants," or something like that.
I think that might be during this conversation where we start to see like, oh, these people don't exist anymore. Something happened. So, Pierce questions Logan about Gabriella, and of course, at that point, Logan, well, because he's not an idiot, probably puts it together that this woman is that woman, but he's just kind of like acting like he has nothing to do with it and goes about his day. And then he makes his way to Mexico to see Professor X, right? Xavier.
Charles Xavier.
Charles Xavier. And
Here,
it's
just known as Charles.
Charles. Chuck.
No, Chuck.
And he calls him Chuck.
That's true. You're right. That's good.
But it's just the saddest thing in the entire world. He pulls up to this just vacant lot, almost like just dilapidated. What is it? Like
It's a water
garage?
tower that has like fallen over.
Right. It's gated. There's a gate.
Right. It's like an old factory whole compound area.
Right.
The beauty of the water tower is when he walks in and you see it. It's very reminiscent of his big brain thing
Oh,
that
right,
he
right.
uses. So that even hits you harder in the heart. 'Cause
Yeah.
It's like this rusted, dilapidated version of that
Right.
that he's living in now, as
As
what
a-
seems to be a Alzheimer's
Right. Well, because
type.
right. So we see him show up to this rundown, abandoned lot with that water tower. And what I have is that there's a gorgeous wide shot of the tank with the holes in it, and it looks like outer space.
Yeah, the
just-
stars are
Wait, what was that thing called in the X-Men? It had a name.
right.
Whatever, I can't remember. But it's reminiscent of that. But yes, it's run down. And they have a conversation where Charles is asking Logan why he's there and why he's keeping him there. And it's really sad that you're kind of like not really sure what's going on. But this is like no condition to have Charles in.
No.
So whatever it is, like, that Logan's not keeping him for sport, like obviously something horrible has happened. And then soon after that,
Cerebro.
soon after that, Charles has a seizure and Logan gives him a shot and the pills, which then we realize, okay, he brought
He's
the
getting
pills
them
for him and he gave him a shot for the seizure. And the seizure is pretty intense because it creates a sort of vibration for everybody.
It freezes basically everything within I don't know what radius. And the creepy thing about it is like the world stops basically. But what's crazy about it is that during that time people can't breathe.
Right.
So now everyone's
'Cause they're
choking, being
constricted.
stood still.
Right. So Logan is obviously trying to manage.
He's the only one strong enough to be able to try to fight through this
Right.
to get to
He manages his condition and
Chuck.
right. And then Charles tells him that he's being contacted or he's seeing a new mutant. And Logan doesn't want anything to do with it. And he's just like, you don't know what you're talking about kind of thing, and just ignores him. But then later we find out that Charles is right. And what he's experiencing is like a call from Gabriella and Laura because they need help. And they need Logan to help them, so they're sending out that vibe, and he's picking it up. However sick he is, he's still picking it up. And Logan's like very upset by the idea that there would be a new mutant, and he says, we're God's mistake, or we could be God's mistake. And Charles says, Charles is very upset, and he says, I gave you a family, And then Logan says they're gone. They're all gone now. So obviously, at that point, we realize everyone's gone.
Everyone's dead.
Everyone's gone. Something horrific happened. There's no happy end.
Apparently, it's called, isn't it the incident in Westchester?
That's what they think they call it.
Right.
But they never really explain
No.
the incident. But
Which
they
is
refer
also
to it.
brilliant.
Yeah.
I think the director originally was saying that he wanted to open the movie with the incident in Westchester, and then he was like, you know what? It's too flashy.
Yeah. The film is
It
something
wasn't
else.
too Western enough.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, this scene between Charles and Logan will repeat itself later in the sense that like it's about caring for an ailing loved one. You know, your sick parent, your dying lover, like whatever. That's what's happening. It's like the sadness that's part of that, and to have like some flashy, war scene would take away from that. So I think he made a good choice to just keep it small and keep it about
Very
this
good choice,
relationship
yeah.
and this tension. So then we see Logan drinking, and he's having a hard time with his blades. He's trying to pull them out all the way because
God.
he has
So bad.
his body's falling apart. It's just really physically difficult for him to even exist at this point. Like he's just really having a hard time.
Yeah.
And he is trying to he's trying to save money because he's trying to get Xavier away, or Charles
They're trying
away
to buy
from
a boat.
Yeah, he wants to get him away from
Population.
To keep him safe and keep the world safe and everything
Sunsetter.
else. The Sunseeker.
Sunseeker.
And then we have Caliban, who's also part of this crew.
The brilliant Stephen Merchant.
Yes, he's great. And he is like sort of the caretaker, of this dilapidated tank and lot.
Right.
And Charles, and he's like giving Logan some crap when he comes out, and he's just like, what are you doing? And you know that this isn't enough and he needs more help. And it's like they're an old married couple, like
Right.
freaking fighting about the kids or fighting about their dying parent or whatever, or like siblings or something.
Right.
Also very intimate, very
You need to talk to me.
yes, like just very dramatic but intimate storytelling there.
Especially the background of Caliban.
Yeah, I
In
don't
the
know too
comic
much
books
about
and stuff. He was a mutant hunter. Because he can sense them.
Oh, that's right. They use him as a tracker.
Yeah. He's a mutant tracker. He was a
Yeah.
bad guy.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
now
wow.
you come upon this movie, you're like, whoa, Caliban's like this now. And old, like done.
Because he's one of the last ones left. There aren't that many.
Yeah.
Who's he going to track? There are no mutants
Right.
left. I see.
He'll be with the last mutant. Last two. Three.
Right. And he says to Caliban says to Logan that you're sick. I can smell it. So again, actually, there was a note I made for myself later that like talked about the film and how important what is said and who says it is. Like I feel like we get different information from different people at different times.
Different points of view.
I guess it's gonna be a Star Wars thing, but the fact that you're explaining who Caliban is now, and that he, like, everything we've seen so far has led to us believing that maybe there's something going on with Logan that's more than just he's tired or whatever. And now we have this character who knows what he's talking about saying you're sick. Like, I know that you're sick. That means he is sick. Like, whatever
Right.
we thought was going on, now we know for sure he's not gonna be okay. And so Logan arrives. He gets an Uber call essentially.
Right.
It's like this little. It's supposed to be 2049, right? Or 20. What year was it? 2049, right?
2049.
And it's like, oh, an Apple phone, and it says, or Android phone, and it's like, oh, here's the map for your next call. Anyways, so he goes to the Uber call, and he arrives at the motel, and sure enough, he sees the Statue of Liberty, which Charles had said, they're waiting for you under the Statue of Liberty. And when he looks up at the motel marquee, it's like this
The Liberty
rundown
Motel or
Liberty
whatever.
Motel, and it has like this sad little Statue of Liberty picture on it or whatever. And he's like, oh,
Such great cinematography.
yeah,
and,
it was beautiful.
ugh.
So he arrives there, and Gabriella explains that she and Laura are on the run, and they need his help, and they are willing to pay.
They had like a shit ton of money
Yeah,
in
she
an
gave him
envelope.
like $20,000 cash, and she said there was another 30,000 when they get to where they're going. So he's just like, damn it, he needs the money. And again, like I said before, I think the connection's there already, and he's not going to be able to avoid Laura. So in some way, I think he's propelled by that as well. So he agrees to come help them the next day. So he goes back to his tank or whatever and discovers. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. He goes back. He talks to Xavier or Charles about it, and then he heads out in the morning. And he arrives, and Gabriella is gone. She's dead. She's just been killed because he discovers her phone, and she was mid-text after he said he was on his way, and obviously she was killed. So then he heads back to Charles, and
Does he see the footage on her phone?
no, not yet,
Okay.
not yet. But he heads back to Charles, and then when he arrives, Caliban sees the trunk open. So he's like, who does this belong to? And there's the ball and the little book bag that Laura had when she was at the motel. So she hitched a ride
Of course.
because that kid's not going to miss a beat. So he's like processing that. And sure enough, here comes Pierce with the
The cavalry.
I don't know if no, he didn't bring, I think it was just him. It was just him. He shows up and he starts questioning Logan, and he's like, you did see them. I wish you told me that you saw them.
Right.
And he's like trying to, like get out of it. And then all of a sudden, Laura throws something and knocks out Pierce. So now he's knocked out, and Caliban takes him. And Charles has come out, and he's like, oh, Laura, you're who I've been waiting for, and all this, and
Right.
like whatever. And he brings her inside, and he's feeding her cereal and whatever. And Logan comes back in, and he's like, obviously immediately there's a tug of war because of a bag or something. Like I think he takes her bag, and she's like, no, and she takes it back, and immediately you're like, uh-oh, this dynamic is going to be pretty on fire, And then the cavalry arrives, and Wolverine packs up Charles in the limo, and he's heading out of town, and he's leaving Laura behind, and Charles keeps telling him, no, you can't leave Laura. You have to go back for Laura. You have to go back for Laura. But he can't escape anyway. He gets cornered, and there's a scene of Laura just like calmly eating her cereal. She's like, there's like a TV monitor showing like all the approaching men, and she's just like eating her cereal, like, this isn't going to be a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, you hear some like random muted tones in the background, and here she comes, like, right out of a Western. She comes with the severed head, and she just throws it right at Pierce. And he's like, okay, come on, Laura, whatever.
Right.
And of course, it just turns into a huge battle, and she's just as
we
fierce.
see what she's capable of.
She's just as fierce as Logan. He's fierce. She's fierce. They're killing everybody. It's like a huge fight.
You see that she has not 3 claws on each hand, just 2 claws on each hand.
Right.
And then she's got claws on her feet.
At least one foot. I don't know.
Both feet have single claws.
She has both.
Which is so badass.
It is badass. And there was, before all of that, actually, I noted that there was this great wide shot, too, of just like a still frame almost of all the men on the left, like all the like villains and henchmen and everything, and she was on the right, and like she's so tiny, and they're like huge, imposing, and I just thought it was a cool shot, like just to show like the disparity and inequity. But then, of course, she's gonna kick their butts anyway.
Right.
So
now they've already captured Caliban, right? Because Pierce is back on the scene.
yes, right.
So the all his henchmen came, grabbed him, took Caliban.
Right. I don't think we knew that right then, but we figure it out. Like it happens. Yes, I noted Laura's claws on her foot, and then after this, there's that Caliban torture scene, which you were just mentioning, like because
Where they're torturing him with sunlight.
yes, because they're trying to extract information
They want
about
him to
where
use his powers to track Logan.
right. And there was that really cool before that, actually, how they escaped. I like that scene where he's driving the limo and he drives it past the train,
Oh,
the rolling train.
Totally.
And it's so funny because it's such a rural problem. That train, like...
They're chasing him alongside the train. He catches up to the front of the train, and the last second, he basically makes a left in front of the train. So does the other car chasing him, and that gets just hit by the train.
Yeah, and then the train, but the thing is, like, those trains will go on for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's why.
Like, there's no way to get past that train.
15-minute train.
Yeah, like, they're like forever. They don't stop going. So it was just cool. It was like a cool way to escape because, especially when you're sort of in that landscape, it's like, well, what else were they going to do? So I thought it was really creative.
And you're in 2049.
And there's still a big ass train.
Right?
So I thought that was cool. Good use of like the landscape, I guess.
Right.
And then we have that cute. So we had this kind of film in the beginning where we have kind of a Western thing going on.
Right.
And, like a chase and everything. And then we go into this kind of like road trip movie.
Right, because they're at the gas station.
Where they're at the gas station.
Convenience store.
Yes, and like there's some really endearing, funny things that go on, and there's some like wrenching things, like when Logan has to take Charles to the bathroom, and it's just like,
adult stuff.
I mean, adult, like really this, like your worst nightmare. You just envision having to help your parent, like go to the bathroom,
Right.
That kind of thing.
And they're giving you grief the whole time.
Oh, yeah, of course. But there's that. And then there's the funny stuff with Laura, like, almost breaking the little thing she's riding. And
the little mechanical horse.
Yeah, and he comes out and gives her a quarter, and he's like, this is the last time, that kind of thing.
She wants to take some stuff from the store, and he's like, not okay.
Well, no, she takes it, and then the clerk is like, you have to pay for that. And he's trying to take it away, and she, like, flips him over and is about to, like, rip his head off.
Right, his body slams him.
And Logan is like, that's not okay. So he's already taking on, like, a parental role.
Right.
So that's what I mean by, like, this sort of road trip.
And you got Charles telling him, you could see she's so much like you.
Right.
He's like, who is she?
Right. And then this is the sequence where they discover Gabriella's video. And she basically explains everything. She uncovers how, like, this company, Transigen or something, has been essentially creating these children.
Right. She was a nurse in the genetic experimentation of new mutant children. Led by Dr. Xander Rice.
Right. Who looks like he's on safari. I didn't understand his costume choice.
What's the name? I'm talking about the safari outfit? Panama Jack?
Yes. That was just one thing I didn't understand why he had to look like that, but
I don't know. But of course it's the typical comics. He's trying to make super soldiers.
Right. And
using DNA from mutants who are already dead.
DNA from mutants and impregnating poor Mexican women.
Right, anonymous mothers who would not be missed, quote unquote.
Right, but it was interesting because she did specify that it was Mexican women. And so then when you see the children later, they're all like really mixed looking.
Yeah.
There's only like a couple like real Caucasian looking kids, but the rest of them are pretty mixed. And then I was like, does this mean all the mutants were men? But then I was like, no, they could have used DNA from a woman right?
Yeah.
To create, I don't know. So there was that. But
They're choosing the DNA according to what their soldiers, because they want Wolverine's super healing
right,
DNA.
right,
That's
right,
the whole thing,
right. So she shows this whole video, like she has like this whole series of things that are happening, and then in the end she shows how like they decided that the project wasn't going anywhere and they started to exterminate the kids essentially.
Right. The kids were too emotional and they weren't listening, and they were like, "Forget it."
And it took them like
Kill
how
'em
long?
all.
Usually it takes like a year to figure that out. It took them like 10 years to figure out that the kids aren't going to listen. So yeah, so they're like basically exterminating these kids, and so she and the other nurses get together and try to help the kids escape, and many of them do escape,
Trying to get them to Canada.
trying to get them to North Dakota,
Well, like, yeah.
right? New Eden or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Yep. And
No, they were getting to Eden so they can go into Canada from there.
oh, right.
Right. So
Mm-hmm.
we're both right.
So they continue driving around. One thing I thought was, well, that's one very futuristic thing. She was able to like edit this whole video right on the phone.
Yeah, that could be a little Haiti when
And like email it to herself or
yeah,
keep it
the
in
video
the
was
phone.
like very well edited and you could hear everything pretty good. And
But it is 2049.
I know
So
there's two things that kind of like took me out a little bit. It was that and back in the beginning when he wakes up in the limo and the Vatos are working on the car.
yeah.
You actually hear like like an air compressor, and when he walks around the car and he sees them, they have a tool that you're just a crowbar that they're just
Right.
turning, so there's no power tools. Stuff like that, but that's fine. I mean,
Audio
I don't
department
care. That,
fail.
yeah, I mean,
Audio mixing fail.
you hear the tires screech when he's in dirt.
Foley.
You hear the tires screech, like, but like it's on a dirt road, so you wouldn't hear that. But I don't care about that because it almost reminds me of like spaghetti westerns, like
Right.
where there's that kind of stuff going on.
No, I don't know. That was probably just a mistake.
All right, so now what?
So now
they
they're-
go to Oklahoma City, right?
Right, but it looks like Vegas.
Where they take residence in a hotel.
There was this cool shot though as they were driving in to this area where like you see all the lights of like what would be a Vegas strip, but it was Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Is Oklahoma City like a casino place or
I
is
don't
it
know,
in
maybe.
2049?
It could be, right? It's whatever it is. I mean,
Maybe Nevada doesn't
we're
exist
dealing with
anymore.
mutants, so
So they arrive and Laura and Charles watch a Western
right.
film. Do you know which one it is?
Yeah, I just don't have that in front of me.
I know I'm not really good with the Western, so I don't remember. Excuse me. But they watch this film together, like they're bonding, but it also has like, significance because in the film, the hero is basically saving the town, saving the family, saving the kid.
1953's Shane.
Shane, thank you. And that's what Laura needs. She needs somebody to save her. So that it's significant in that sense. And sure enough, Charles goes into another seizure, and the seizure sequence, just as like the villains are approaching again, because now they've gotten
Right.
Caliban to give them their location again, and they're approaching. Logan knows this because he sees them, and he's like, "Oh my God!" He's starting to try to get away from them so he can go get Charles, and all of a sudden we're in this like seizure sequence again. And it's so genius because, again, we're dealing with a film that doesn't have the budget for like these CGI huge
Right.
fight scenes and sequences and battle sequences and whatnot. So, you're limited in that sense. But then also, they did such a good job of taking the main villain really in the film, which is Charles's condition, is the demise of him and all the mutants apparently, and they brought it to the forefront. Like, this is the condition that is
Right.
creating this world.
Was he faking taking his pills? Is that why also was happening?
No, I think
Did
that
we see that? Like he'd put it under his tongue and then take it out?
I don't think so, but I mean, Caliban in the beginning said the bottle was just ibuprofen. So I don't know that the
Right.
pills were even really helping him. But the other thing is, I think you don't know it when the sequence first begins because you're watching Logan sift through, clawing his way literally to Charles. But you do when he gets there, you see that the villains had already arrived and they
Right.
were pointing their guns to him. So I think he probably went into a seizure from the stress of having them
Right. And they
so
had just
close.
had a big argument because Wolverine sees all the comic books
Oh yeah.
and he's yelling at Charles. He's like, "This doesn't exist, this Eden. It's all fake. It's in the comic book." And she keeps pointing to it and
Right.
pointing to it. And
Right.
he's just like, "We have to go there." And he's just like, "This is bullshit. It
Right.
doesn't exist." And that's when it's just like,
That's
everything-
right. That's when the film starts to sort of mention itself, like just the idea that okay, here are the X-Men, and it's a comic book, and
Right.
it was real, but
Calling
it wasn't
themselves
real.
out.
They're kind of like calling themselves out, and
I love that.
I love it too.
That.
It's
It's so awesome.
It was really cool. But then the seizure sequence, he's killing as Logan works his way to Charles, he's killing all of the henchmen, so that when the seizure's over, there won't be a threat.
Right. Then he gives
him the shot.
the injection, right?
Because
The
Laura,
serum.
Laura helps him. You can see Laura can also work her way through the seizure. And they give him the shot, and then the seizure ends, and they make their escape. And I also noted that it was interesting that such a huge event like that seizure can be controlled by like this tiny little needle with this tiny little
Right.
amount of serum or whatever medicine it is. And I think it's important because it like just keeps showing us the cruelty of this arbitrary condition. Like it just makes no sense that this
Right.
huge, powerful mind that can create all of this can be controlled by like microscopic, elements,
Right.
and so that's also really important to the story, I think, because it just seems like dementia in general seems so arbitrary and so cruel, you
Right.
know. So it was just like probably the darkest thing that could have happened to Charles, and
Yeah.
by extension, the world.
And
you know?
what's beautiful about that is what I'm sure you're getting to next is the next scene with the horses.
Yeah.
But before that, this is what we were talking about before. Before that, you hear them talking on the radio, and the news person is talking about the incident that happened, that recently just happened with them,
right.
and they were comparing it to the incident in Westchester.
Right. So you get
And then they turn off the radio.
and you get an idea of sort of what happened in Westchester.
Right. Then you see like the automated trucks
Yeah.
on the highway. They're
Yeah.
really cool. Like
Yeah.
that's the only futuristic thing we really see about it. But then what happens?
Then so these horses, they're on the road, they're making their escape, and they come across these big trucks, and one of them makes a huge noise, and then all of a sudden it cuts off Logan or something, but they all sort of get skewed, and then there's another truck carrying a load that turns out to be horses.
Right, a horse trailer.
A horse trailer, and it veers off the road, and the horses go wild, and they like come running
all over
out,
the place.
which is like a beautiful cinematic image, right? Like these wild horses just kind of
Bucking
like
up and down while
coming
these
out right
like automated trucks are flying
Yeah,
up and down the highway.
just like roaming free and innocent. And you're just like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the horses? And then Charles, of course, is like, well, we have to help them.
Right, and Logan's like,
And
no.
they say, we don't have time. We got to go. And he's like, no, we have to stop
Someone
and
will
help
come
them.
along.
Someone has come along.
And then Xavier says, someone has come along.
Right. And Logan's like, God damn it. So he,
Xavier pulling off his Jiminy Cricket.
yeah. And then Charles uses his mind to rein in the horses.
Which is what I think is beautiful because it's like
He
Go
had all
ahead.
this chaos.
Yes, thank you.
And then he still has some control over it. And it's kind of like when you have a family member suffering from dementia, and then all of a sudden you have that clarity. It's very emotional for people. And even just like watching it always
Very
seems
yin and yang.
emotional. Yeah, just
Him just settling those horses, and everyone's like, "What's going on?"
Yeah.
And you just see him with this like peace,
yeah, like
and you're
he's
like, "See,
able to
that's
he's able to help, and he's able to calm, and that's who he really is. And so they meet the family, and the family invites them, and Logan of course is like no, and
Eric LaSalle."
Eric LaSalle, and Charles is like we'd love to.
Yeah, of course, typical, right? It's
So
almost
they're
like sitcomish.
great. Yeah. But then we go back to the villains, and they have Caliban and the doctor who looks like he's on safari. What's his name again? Do you remember?
Oh yeah,
I don't know. His name. He's telling Caliban that
oh, you mean Dr. Rice?
Dr.
Yeah.
Rice. He's telling Caliban that Charles is sick, and that he thinks it's some sort of Alzheimer or something. And so again, it's like, what information are we getting and from who, right? So here's the villain, the doctor, but he is a doctor, so he knows what he's talking about. And he says Charles has Alzheimer's. And now we're like, oh my God, this is what's causing all of this. Like, he doesn't have control of his mind
Right.
anymore. And then it's so sad, to know that, to have like a diagnosis. And then we go back to the Charles and Logan and Laura with the family they met on the road. And it's just like a beautiful family dinner, neighborly, wholesome. They just have a nice dinner. They just talk, and they like get to know each other. They say a few things like Logan says Charles was a teacher and had a school, and they're like, oh, they're like chit-chatting, kind of like normal
Very great.
people.
Very
Very
great.
nice. But then quickly you find out that this family has its own problems,
Right.
because they've been bullied, and they've been harassed by a local business for their land.
Right. And FYI, the banter at the dinner table was improv.
Oh, was
They said apparently they rehearsed their lines like 7 times or whatever, and then like the director was like, all right, now just do an improv one, and they said that worked the best.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely had like a very sort of casual, homey feel to it. Like,
Right. And it could be a little awkward too because they're strangers.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a very free flowy conversation because it could be like a little hesitant too,
Well,
which is great.
It seemed, yeah. I mean, it seemed like they were all like just having a nice dinner.
Yeah, it was good.
I mean,
Natural.
yeah. So then Logan agrees to go with Eric LaSalle.
Water, right? The
to
water
deal
pressure.
with the water pressure or whatever it is. But first, he's going to put Charles to bed. So he carries him up to bed, and Charles has this beautiful moment where he says, "This is what life feels like, and you still have time." And Logan, just as he's leaving, he says, "The world is not the same as it was," and you just realize the depth of like how closed off he is to everything and everyone. Like, he just can't accept that there's anything left. Meanwhile, Charles is still like hopeful,
Right.
that there's a chance to have all of this happen. And then Logan he says he doesn't believe Eden is real. So you feel like, as an audience member, well, what is real? Like, is there any hope here? Is there anything worth fighting for anymore? And then, then there's a scene with Eric LaSalle and his aggressors, and like Logan puts them in their place, and then Eric is like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He's like, you've had some training? And he's like, yeah, a little bit. And we're like, okay, dangerous man.
Right.
And then, of course, we cut back to Charles in bed, and this is probably the most heartbreaking part of the film. And like, I don't even know if I can talk about it without getting emotional, but
If you want me to, I can do it.
He has this beautiful confession where he acknowledges what he did, and he says he's sorry, you know?
He admitted he had a massive seizure at the school in Westchester, which resulted in the deaths of most of the X-Men.
Yeah, and he also says that he understands Logan finally because he can like has this moment of clarity where he remembers what happened and he understands why Logan's been keeping him the way he has and helping him along. And there was just like it was like about forgiveness, about understanding, about family. It was beautiful. And then he says no, and then you think it's Logan. He comes up to him and just freaking
Puts his hand to his chest and just releases the claws.
and you're like, "Oh my god, what just happened here?" Like I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't even believe it. And it was like crazy. Then the movie turned into like
Well,
something else.
Laura sees this, and
Yeah.
she pounces
Yeah.
on what you see is like this young Logan,
Right.
which is X-24.
X-24.
But like,
Which they had alluded to him before when they were talking about the kids
right.
in the video.
That's why they want everyone killed, because X-24 was good. They're like, all right, this is the keeper.
They're
Kill
like,
everybody
we're
else.
not going to raise mutants and we're not going to raise them to hate. We're going to make one that doesn't know anything but, you know?
Right.
And they showed like a body and like hands and legs and stuff. So you kind of in the back of your mind have the idea that there was something possibly going on with like a full grown mutant, but it still comes as a huge surprise. And the movie turns into something else at this point. So then there's another huge fight once Logan arrives, and I mean, X-24 kills the son, kills the mother, kills Eric LaSalle, and then Logan is realizing what's happening. He runs up to Charles. He sees him and he says, "It wasn't me, it wasn't me." And you're like, "Oh my God," hysterical crying. He picks him up. He brings him to the car. Again, he's leaving without Laura.
Yep.
Second time.
Yep.
He's about to leave without Laura. And
He's not used to having a kid.
well, I think
just
that
kidding, I
his
know.
dedication is to Charles, and his
Fight or flight.
loyalty is
Yeah.
to Charles, and he wants to protect him. I think he also knows that
Wants to get him to a hospital.
the danger that is present when Charles is unstable is also probably a driving force. But I think it's more because he loves him.
Yeah.
So he takes him, and in Charles's final moment,
Puts him in the back of a pickup truck, right?
yeah, and they have like this close up of Charles's face, and he's just looking at Logan, and his final words are "the Sunseeker," and I was like, oh no, because it's in his final moment he's looking towards the future. That was their plan. Like, well, it wasn't really their plan because he didn't know about it, but he knew of it. And it was safety. It was like the future. It was like an escape. And it was the last thing he said, which was heartbreaking. And then we have, X-24 causing all kinds of unbridled destruction and carnage. I mean, he's killing everyone. He's destroying everything.
Right.
He's an animal.
Right. Because what's his face? Pierce and Dr. Rice, they all show up.
Yes.
Because we see Caliban in the back of a van. Mm-hmm. They've actually set up shop, and he brought them to them.
Right. He had been trying to delay, but then I guess they tortured him some more, and he was able
with
to
sunlight.
find with sunlight. And then while X-24 is causing all this destruction, Caliban takes two grenades
Yep.
and blows up the truck.
Yep. With himself in it.
With himself in it. So he sacrifices himself. And Logan has to fight X-24, which is like a crazy fight because we all know how Logan is not well. But he's also very, very upset. And he rages, so he has that fight. And then Eric LaSalle's character
Yeah.
shows up with like a truck or something, and
He just rams X-24 with a pickup truck at full speed
into like some other like huge farm vehicle with like jagged edges or something, and so he's pinned there. And Logan is like almost out for the count, and then Eric LaSalle gets out with his shotgun, and he's about to shoot Logan too.
Yeah, he just wants them all dead.
And he has run out of bullets, and he just dies. Like, he just passes out, like he's gone. And at that point, Logan takes Laura, who's been trapped as she's been like, she
Right.
almost looks like a little hog, you know, she's tied up on the thing, and then he takes her. And then the next scene, we see Logan and Laura burying Charles
In the woods.
in the woods. And then Logan is like trying to get the truck started, and he can't, and he's just beating it up, and he's a mess.
He's smashing the truck with a shovel.
Yeah, he's so spent and distraught, and he just passes out like right on the ground in the middle of the road. And the next thing we see, he comes to, and he's been taken to a doctor's office by Laura.
Right, wakes up in a clinic.
Yeah, and the doctor's just like, oh, I always wanted to meet one of you guys, which just gives you hope that there is a future for mutants in the world. Like, not everybody hates mutants, and there are people willing to help mutants still. He doesn't take the help. He wants to move on, right? He has to get out of town. And,
which is pretty much getting us to Act 3.
yeah. So he takes Laura, and she says, you're dying. Wait, she starts talking.
First, she says, "You're welcome," I think in Spanish, to the doctor or something like that.
Oh, really?
And he was just like, wait a minute. You speak?
No, I think he hears her speak for the first time in the car, because she's like, you need to take, he doesn't want to take her. She pulls out the little thing that says like, take me here.
Right.
And he's like, no, we're not going there. That's made up. And she's like, you know, trying to show him, no, you have to take me here without saying it. But then at some point she just gets upset, and she just starts yelling at him in Spanish.
In the truck, yeah, that she stole from a fisherman.
And he's like, you can talk? And she's like,
rambling in Spanish.
But in Spanish. And she's like, you know, basically saying, you need to take me. We need to see this. We need to see that. And she starts saying all the names of the children. And he's like, stop it, stop it, stop it. And she just keeps repeating the names of the kids. And, you know, that finally wears him down. So he's like, fine, I'll take you.
Such resignation.
I know.
Just yelling at her, and she yelling at him like...
Because it's a parent-child dynamic that they have going on. And
they're both stubborn.
You know how stubborn children can be. And she has a good reason to be stubborn. And he finally breaks down. He's like, fine, I'll take you. And in
the story of X-23, her mom is a badass too, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't really talk about her here.
Different story.
But anyway, so they're driving along, and Logan is a mess, and he's falling asleep, and she basically says to him, you're dying.
Mm-hmm. You're dying.
You want to die, and he doesn't refute her claim.
He's like, no shit,
but
Sherlock.
He doesn't want to let her drive. So finally, he falls asleep, and she starts driving.
Now it's a buddy road trip movie.
Again. It's another road trip. And so when he comes to this time, he's at the camp. She's gotten them to Eden.
Right.
And to me, the fact that, you know, he's passed out, the filmmakers show her making the decision to let him rest and take over.
Right.
She gets out, she moves his feet, she gets in the driver's seat, and she takes off. And to me, that's when the baton was passed.
Right.
The story we came to see is being moved to the next generation, and she takes over. So she gets him to the camp, and those kids mend him.
Right. They heal him.
Yeah.
Basically.
Using the serum and the whatever.
Right.
And
they
cut his beard.
Then they make him look like the cartoon, the comic book.
Which was
Wolverine.
so cute, because the scene was like all the scissors, and they're like just snipping, and they're all giggling, and it was really cute and endearing. Because they had this like Lilliputian thing going on, like Gulliver's Travels. These little people, but they're children. And then
Then he basically passes out again, right?
yeah, he passes out a couple of times, and then he gets some basic information like where am I, what's going on, how long have I been gone, how long have where's Laura, and like whatever, and all this
Right. He talks to the
exposition.
kid. Yeah, yeah.
There's one child. He's a little bit older.
Richter.
He seems to be like the one in charge.
Yeah, Richter.
Richter. Oh, is that because he can?
He just
Like an
seems to be the
earthquake?
leader, but yeah, he does that.
Yeah.
No, he lifts the.
He lifts the truck.
Yeah.
Right at the end. But sure enough, the villains arrive and they infiltrate the camp and they're trying to round up all the kids and Logan,
Well, he
Logan
wakes
was on
up-
his way out.
He wakes up. The kids are gone.
Right, because they were trying to cross the border.
So now he's looking through that telescope they have, and he sees where they're going, and then he looks the other way and sees friggin' thug trucks coming down the dusty trail.
Right.
Now it's on.
Because Pierce
Right.
figured out the location based on.
He found the picture with the coordinates in the
Yes,
back.
that's right. That's right. How convenient. So then he was on his way out and Laura was like, you can't leave. And he was like, I'm out. I told you I was going to bring you here and now you're here and I'm leaving. And she was like, she said something to him and he's like, you don't understand. Everyone I love
Bad
gets
things
hurt.
happen.
Bad things happen to people
do I
I
care
love.
about.
And she said, well, then I should be fine. And it's like, oh my God.
Right after that, you just need to hear like a door slam.
I know. Oh, well, before that, they had that beautiful scene where he's first waking up and she was like, you were having a nightmare. And he says, I know. He's like, my nightmares. He says, yes, I was having a nightmare. And she says, I have nightmares too. And people are hurting me. And he was like, my nightmares are different. I'm hurting people. And you're like, oh my God. It's like, he's so tortured. And she says, well, I've hurt people too.
And he goes, "That's something you're gonna learn to you're gonna have to learn to live with."
And she's like, they were bad people. She's a little lawyer. But anyway, so they had that heart to heart, and then the argument where she was like, well, then I should be fine. And she basically just realizes he's gonna peace out. So
Right.
she goes with her friends, and then he doesn't peace out.
Right.
So he shows up to help them when the going
And
gets
also,
rough.
Richter gives him that envelope of all the money. He's like, "This is
Right.
what you did it for, right?
Right. Another
In
like
your face."
in your face, yeah. So there's just a huge action scene where
Logan takes off
yeah.
to go meet the kids and Pierce's boys, right?
Well, once he sees them
Yeah,
coming,
once
he
he sees
goes.
them.
Yeah, he goes, and then he takes a serum, and
He does the whole freaking thing, right?
Yeah, I
He
think
just
so.
pumps the whole
to try to be stronger.
Because earlier the kid was like, "Only put a little at a time."
'Cause it makes you crazy.
Right.
So he takes the whole serum and he heads out basically to protect these kids, and then there's just a lot of battling, and then the kids also like they show off some of their powers.
Oh, but it's
And
brutal, right?
yeah, I mean I don't remember much except for the final, like when he's fighting X-24.
Oh,
And-
remember when he's running through the forest and he's just like slicing people down?
Oh yeah,
Because he's berserking because he
Yeah.
took that whole thing. So he's like, ah! And you have that final classic Wolverine
Yeah.
of running through the woods, just slicing
That's
people.
true. That's
like
true.
his last stand,
Right.
Until, of course, he gets to...
He gets to X-24, and X-24 is just like,
Oh, because a lot of kids get captured.
yes. Do they? I know they capture Pierce, the kids,
Before that, the kids are captured.
some of them.
And he makes Logan give himself up.
Oh my God, I'm like totally
And
missing.
then they retaliate.
I just remember the kids somehow get Pierce on the ground, and they like all work their different different powers, and they kind of bury
Logan
him.
confronts Dr. Rice, who's rounded up the children and is holding them at gunpoint.
Oh,
Rice reveals that he's actually the son of the man
Right.
killed by Wolverine when he escaped the Weapon X project. Rice admits responsibility for the extinction of mutants thanks to a virus developed by Transgen that was seeped into food supplies. So that's how he killed the rest of the mutants.
oh,
Before he can continue his monologue, Logan shoots him dead in a desperate move and goes after Pierce.
Right.
And that's when X-24 is released.
Right. Right. That's right. Pierce. He's like, go get him, boy, or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
He
yeah.
comes out and he's like berserking too.
Dude, young Logan.
Oh, and I totally forgot. Up until now, there's been like this whole foreshadowing with this adamantium bullet that Logan's been
keeps the
carrying
bullet
around
to
with
kill
him to
himself.
kill himself.
Right.
But of course, when the time comes, Laura uses the bullet to kill X-24.
Right.
But by then, you know, Logan's been
Impaled.
and it's horrible.
Right.
He's like crucified almost because it's just very gory and terrible.
Well, the way he just gets dragged to over there.
Oh my God.
He
By
gets
the
dragged
shoulder.
by the shoulder with the claws, X-24's claws in the shoulders.
God,
Yeah.
so sad.
So bad. So bad.
So she kills X-24 and then she heads over to Logan and she cuts him loose from the tree at least.
Right.
Just so that he's not hanging from the tree. But he's, you know, obviously he's not going to get better. And, you know, he's looking at her and she's looking at him and he says to her, he finally understands, like, what it feels like, I guess, because...
Yeah, because he's supposed to be immortal.
Yeah, but I think it was more like because he got to know her and, like, he cared for her and the kids, like, he was a father. She
Right.
says daddy to him. I don't know if she says daddy before or after he says that, though. She might have said... No, I think she says it after. So, because when he dies, she says daddy.
Well, it says, Logan tearfully tells Laura to run with the others.
Right.
They're free. She cries, calling him daddy. And Logan responds, so, this is what it feels like.
Right.
Before he dies.
Right. So I think that's what he's referring to. The fact that she's calling him daddy, like that he's finally had that experience of being a father, of ushering in the next generation, you know. And of course I
didn't think of that. That's great.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I always thought it was like, so this is what it feels like to be mortal.
Oh, well, maybe that's part of it too, but I think it has more to do with the relationship they had and shared.
Yeah, that's even more beautiful. It's great.
Yeah, because he went through the whole life cycle there.
Yeah.
You know, he lost his parent in Charles.
Right.
And
he gained a child.
And he had a child and he protected his child and now she's going to take over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So then she and her friends bury him. She repeats the phrases from Shane that she remembered.
A man has to be what he is, Joey. Can't break the mold. There's no living with the killing. There's no going back. Right or wrong, it's a brand that sticks. Now you run on home to your mother. You tell her everything's all right. There are no more guns in the valley.
Right. So, and then the kids kind of take off to Canada, I guess, to safety because they've already received the signal that all is clear. If they can make it, they're going to be all right. And so it's sort of like the next generation is starting.
Yeah.
And so even though the film was so grim and so brutal, it still ends hopefully.
With, of course, what Laura does is right before she leaves, she takes the cross off and makes it an X.
Heart. Your heart is like, no, I can't take this kid. She's so cool. Like, I mean, it was a very intense film. I think a lot of people enjoyed it because it was such a departure from regular hero movies.
Right.
And I think people want to see that more. They want to see these stronger, deeper storylines from like these characters that they know. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for anybody else to sort of come up with this different interpretation of a film of a superhero movie because I don't think you can
more comic book movie.
You can't really recycle these themes.
No, it's been told. This has been told.
Like it's like the things that make people human. I feel like they covered all of them in this film. like loss, forgiveness, guilt. You know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you're not progeny, but your future, like your namesake, your not namesake, but just the idea. I think most humans feel like it's important to
your heir or
to have like to prolong your
right.
life. You know, your by having children or the next generation or whatever. Those are all very human themes. I don't really think anybody else can sort of take those same themes and then tell a story about a different superhero and have it feel as fresh.
Yeah, I mean the fact that like that's the most beautiful thing about this movie is that like being a comic book movie, it's like the last thing on the list of these characters, but they happen to be mutants. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it was based around being mutants and the last mutants, but like you were saying, it's about family, it's about love, you know, it's about all that stuff
Loss.
where you don't even the fact of the matter that they just happen to be mutants, you know, in a comic book universe. But even if you took all that away, you could still make this. It would still be a beautiful film.
It would still be a beautiful film, yeah. Of course, it wouldn't have like that level of
the depth of the
yeah.
backstory we know about these characters and that, but like
yeah, and the novelty of having these superpowers be like in a sense toned down to tell the story. You
Right.
know, like I mean, they're not really toned down because there's still quite a lot of action and there's still quite a lot of super power phenomena. You know, but at the same time, it's like the fact that Wolverine can berserk isn't what the story's about.
right, or
know?
like Pierce and his gang were all amputees. So they all had like some limbs missing with futuristic
Right.
type electronic bionic arm / legs
Right.
happening too, which is a little side story too, you know.
Yeah, so it was I really liked it. I mean, it's kind of a movie I don't look forward to seeing too often just because it's so deep and so heavy that I'm just like,
I can't take it off every time it's on.
oh, really?
I'm like, well, it's on. I'm gonna have to watch it now.
It's a little deep, but it's like it's heavy. I think the overall like aging parent thing,
Right.
you know, is tough personally for me. And so that's part of it, I think, is just like hard to watch Charles. I mean, it's hard to watch Logan too, but it's so hard to watch Charles
yeah.
be so like debilitated.
And I find myself, even if I'm like, I put it on and I'm walking by and there's a certain scene on, I'll just stand there and watch it. Next thing I know, I'm crying. I'm like, oh, why does this get me every time? Every time.
Well, because it's beautiful. It's very well written, and it was nominated for an Oscar for adapted screenplay.
Yep.
So, you know, they did a very good job of putting the story together and having it resonate with the audience. And it was a gamble, I think, because you never know how people are going to react when you take subject matter that's already existed and then you like sort of put this very emotional deep situation on top of that.
Oh yeah.
People could be like completely not receptive, you know. So it was a big risk.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman said that this was the hardest Wolverine movie for which he ever trained. Mm-hmm. He did some like crazy stuff where is it? It was in here somewhere where Hugh Jackman induced dehydration for 48 hours prior to filming scenes of Wolverine shirtless, losing water weight. He added that the method is dangerous and no one should attempt it at home. Jackman used the same technique 5 years earlier to create his emaciated look for prisoner Jean Valjean in Les Miserables.
Yeah, I mean
He pulled it off, man.
Yeah,
he looked friggin' tattered.
yeah.
Sir Patrick Stewart lost 21 pounds for this role
Oh my god.
to look more elderly and sick.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bad. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, this was great. This is that's why we own it.
I know. It's a beautiful film, and I also think the the young actress Daphne Keane was really, really good. She just had this haunting quality about her. Like just her presence was very commanding.
Yeah, not at one. There was no time where I was just like, man, this kid's doing pretty good. Like after a while, I'd be like, this is an 11-year-old kid.
I know. I heard that the young girl from Stranger Things was up for the role, the one who plays 11, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a wonderful actress too. She may have done a great job, but I think this girl was just perfect.
Yeah.
Like she was just, there was something savage about her.
That Spaniard thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's right, because she's Spanish.
Yeah.
From Spain, and she has like that stubbornness about her. I think but she just cuts, like her gaze is so disarming.
Right.
And then Hugh Jackman, of course. I mean, he's a wonderful performer. He's good at everything he does. But I think he really went somewhere in this movie that like I don't think we saw that other movie that we liked that he was in where he kind of was in this desperate sort of place, and that was that movie Prisoners. Which was actually directed by that director you like from the new Blade Runner movie.
Right.
And in that he was Hugh Jackman's character was dealing with the abduction of his daughter.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like this crazy, like very, very borderline criminal act that he like kidnapped who he thought was responsible for the abduction of his child and was like essentially torturing him. Oh. And it was just a very psychological, deep, dirty, nasty kind of movie. And he was really good in it. So I think he always kind of had
the grit,
that sort of desperation that comes with this role. Like he's just at the end of his rope.
Does it so well. But he does it so well.
But even though he was at the end of his rope, he never quit on anyone. You know, right. He just he kept going until the very last moment.
The very last breath.
Yeah. So, you know, he's a hero for that, but he's very troubled in this movie, and he really portrayed that. And it's hard to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was very, very good. Definitely recommend.
Right? Well, I mean, you know, that was the movie's an emotional journey.
Yeah. It is.
It definitely got its roller coaster on the emotions, but I think it's time to come to an end here.
I know, now that we're just depressed.
Right? It's just like, okay, now that we've bummed you out for an hour and a half.
Good
night. Sweet dreams. No, but this has been our 7th episode of After Dark here. Make sure you guys tune in to the next After Dark, and we'll continue discussing these films that we love, and we'll do it hate-free. We're gonna have to go through all these different Oscar-nominated or Oscar-winning films that we have already too. So we can do Shape of Water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we can do some fun ones.
Definitely. There's some stuff on Netflix too.
That's true too. I've been doing a lot of Netflix stuff on the Solo set.
You like Altered Carbon?
Yeah, it's I'm going through that series now. You guys should check it out. But as always, Claudia, thank you for being the other half of the we on this After Dark show here on the 0DB podcast feed. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your host, Gabe Agnel. Be sure to comment or ask questions at 0dbpodcast.com, or you can reach me Twitter at 0db23 or at 0dbpodcast on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for listening, and you can catch these shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podomatic, and YouTube, and soon Spotify. So don't forget to subscribe, and please feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you all, and thanks again. See you next time, and have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.